Here at the news at 1, Chris Gilmore, and for the less perceptive of you, he is of Scottish descent. Chris, thanks indeed for coming in on this one.
Thank you, Devon. Pleasure to be here.
All right. This has been split in half. I mean, it's polarized, plain to see that. Is that surprising, and what does it tell us about the collective wants of the Scottish people?
It is surprising. If you look at the voting intentions at the beginning of this year, you looked at the yeses, the people in favour of separatism, at about 30%, and the noes at 70%. And over the past few weeks, it's gradually got about 50-50. So as you rightly say, highly polarised, very much a split between the yeses and the noes. I think the main issue here is, as far as the yeses are concerned, and don't forget the Scottish National Party, who are vanguarding all of this, have been around for 80 years, and they've been enjoying a progressive upwards movement in their support over in many decades. I think the main thing here is self-determination, and you guys put it very eloquently there. I think they're looking for greater say over their own affairs, because, you know, and you also put it very interestingly, it tends to be left-leaning in Scotland. And so you'll find the British Labour Party have got a huge chunk of votes in Scotland. They dominate the Westminster votes. Now, if that was taken out of the equation, nothing would happen. They get no votes at all from Scotland. And that would mean that they would be under severe forward pressure as far as getting back into power in Westminster is concerned. So there's a lot at stake here for all constituencies.
Right, let's take a look at the three main economic issues here. Right, let's start with the currency. You have the London-based opposition parties saying that yes, okay, if you go ahead with the yes vote and you win that, you take independence, we're not letting you use the pound. The guys, pro-independence guys, back in Scotland saying you're bluffing. Where does the currency situation stand with you? How important is that?
Look, it's a very important issue, and make no mistake. The first point, again, I think a lot of this is scaremongering. There's nothing, they can't stop the Scots from using the pound. They can't prevent them. In the same way as they can't prevent Robert Mugabe from using the pound up in Zimbabwe, or the dollar, or the rand, or whatever. What they can do is they can say, well, you can use the pound, that's fine, but you can have no say in terms of interest rate movements. So that would mean that there'd be no say as far as the Monetary Policy Committee equivalent in the UK would be concerned. There'd be no Scottish representation there. So that would mean you couldn't therefore dictate the direction of your currency, and that's important. So that obviously I think is something that's going to have to be negotiated. Would Scotland in an independent situation want to carry on with a situation like that? Probably not. Would it go the full hog and have its own currency? Not entirely sure. And that is an immensely grey area, and it's one that that's a genuine concern, I think, yes.
Chris, you want to be an independent country, you've got to have money, you've got to have sustainable income. Now let's look at those oil reserves in Scotland. There's a theory that, you know, those oil reserves have already reached its peak, and you hear this peak oil theory that comes up now and then. Is that concerning? I mean, are we guaranteed that money's going to come out of there, or is this just on a downhill now as far as reserves are concerned?
Look, reserves are definitely past the peak, no doubt about that. But the methods that are used to extract oil these days, I mean, for example, you find that you can put rigs up just on the Aberdeenshire coast, and you can actually use these wonderful oil exploration things that will actually, you don't even have to go into the sea itself. And it's amazing what you can do with new technology. So a lot more can be brought out than was the case 20, 30, 40 years ago. But nevertheless, it is a declining resource, no doubt about it. But when you spread that declining resource over 5 million people rather than 65 million people, it makes a huge difference. And you touched on the preamble. The GDP per capita is significantly higher for an independent Scotland than it is for the Union as a whole.
All right, I tried to work out this morning what it means for us and what it means for me. Let's talk one of the best-loved exports, whiskey. How is the export of whiskey from Scotland, leaving its shores, going to be affected by this? Because one would imagine that it needs the support from the European Union laws, for example, and some benefits that lie within that sphere. If it's divorced from that, can it affect the export of whiskey in any shape or form?
No. Export of whiskey is going to carry on. There's a huge demand all around the world. There's not such a big demand in the UK, or in Scotland for that matter, because of the huge excise duties. 90% of the final cost of a bottle of whiskey in the UK is taken up by duties. But as far as exports are concerned, no, they'll carry on regardless. Look, being part of the Union, I think, has certainly helped in this regard, you know, in terms of having embassies and stuff all around the world. It's got the message out, and I think they've done a very, very good job. But I think in an independent scenario, I think you would find that the entrepreneurial Scots would be out there in force and probably establishing beachheads in countries like South Africa, for example, and promoting the export of Scottish products.
Right, apart from that, us sitting in South Africa here, we have some trade ties with that part of the world. Essentially, what does this vote mean for an emerging country like ours?
For us, it probably doesn't have an awful lot of meaning in terms of the actual bit that refers to Scotland itself. What it probably means, though, is in terms of the breakup of a former colonial power, I'm thinking more in terms of a broader aspect for other emerging countries around the world, and not necessarily in Africa. Probably more in the European continent. I'm thinking of countries like areas like Catalonia, for example, which may well be encouraged by all of this, and which may say to themselves, well, if the Scots can do it after 300 years, so can we from Spain. And so that might have resonance in many other countries around the world. So that perhaps is a bit worrying for central governments in many other countries.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Chris Gilmore, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you, Dan.